Welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light with these videos. I wanted to go into a little flow and I'm a little under the weather, or as I like to say, I'm going through a process of upgrades. And I'll just kind of touch on that briefly, just as a gentle reminder, because every time I get sick or go through a process of being under the weather, I tend to beat myself up even more by saying things like, oh, why did this happen? Or how could I have avoided this? Or this is such an inconvenience. And that can even lower our frequency even more when we get into that space of self judgment. And I will share, I know in this particular situation, I did allow myself to get a little run down. And this is where I want to really just kind of remind everybody that while we are going throughout our days and we're going above and beyond to try to squeeze as much as we can in one day, and I always talk about self-care and self-love and taking time for ourselves, but I mean, let's face it, we all do that from time to time, myself included. So I recognized, whenever I'm under the weather, it gives me the opportunity to go within and start to feel things from a different angle, a different perspective. And from this angle, I thought I really kind of ran myself into the ground last week. And so it can make us more susceptible to things in our environment. And it also is sometimes the body's way of just saying, hey, you're going to stop, and this is how we're going to make you stop. We being the cells in the body, our guidance team, whatever it might be. It's giving me an incredible chance of self-reflection, even though there's quite a few things I've missed out on. Simultaneously, I've gained a lot also. I was so under the weather that I was unable to make a video. I just felt like I had to integrate. And so that's something else, because sometimes we fight through it. We think, oh, I have to get this done or I have to get that done. And then it is basically taking away from the whole purpose of us needing to take this downtime. And downtime is even kind of a funny word. It's like we're not down, we're just in a different place. We're in a place of needing to be silent or relaxed or sleeping, giving our chance for our body to heal. Okay, so I want to go into a little flow. I love my background. Thank you, my dear cousin. This is my cousin's wall in her shower. I take crazy pictures everywhere I go, and people are like, why are you taking a picture of that? I'm like, can you believe this? This is beautiful. So now I feel at one with my cousin. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go into a little flow and potentially a little energetic update. I really don't know where to start today. I don't have a general idea of where this is going to go, and sometimes I do. And so let's just play and see what this where this leads us in the conversation and the energy exchange here. And so as I open up to these energies, there are different layers that I could go into. It's like opening a file box, one might say, and sifting through the files to say, which one should I choose? Yet in that moment, that is actually still a combination of the logical as well as the analytical, as well as the creative aspect. It's still a merge of the two. And that is one of the topics we would like to discuss today, which is a merge of these energies. For this is happening at a grand scale, and we will flow in and out of a few processes today of how this looks in channeling, for example. In this particular moment, I, Carrie, have not stepped aside fully, for I am just allowing this higher version of me, or this connection to the ancestry tree, so to speak, a more in flow reunion with different aspects of myself that are really just a connection into the void, the field that I am able to then tune into and pull from that field certain subject matter or matter beyond matter that allows us to deal with certain matters that are in this wheel, shall we say. I'm hearing Wheel of Fortune. So as we spin this wheel, there are so many different topics that we could go into, that we could deep dive into and come back with information about. We could project ourselves into the future and pull back information from that time stream. For there are many different streams and times that we could tune into. And while some say, yes, please, let's do that, we would venture to say, what is that? For there is not only one that, there are many what ifs out there. There are many probabilities and projections. There are many people thinking what if right now that is setting us up in a particular direction. So if we focus on a flow right now that just allows us to combine the left and right hemispheres, if you will, of the world map, of the body map, of the mapping system that we are tuning into, we are giving or offering an example of how each and every one of you tunes into you and your higher self, if you wish to call it that. For the higher self is nowhere above you. It is all around and within you. It is a drop in, if you will, into a frequency that allows for a higher form of communication, yet it is beyond form. For this information that is being shared right now is accessible beyond form, and it is coming from things or energies, if you will, that are really outside of form at times. And from a future perspective, it is very connected to the future form of the human. For the human has the full capacity to tune into the future form of themselves and the former version of themselves in form as well. And this can be very helpful at times when we look back at the past versions of ourselves to make sense of the time that we are in now. And if we sit and look at the time that we are in now, we can get a very good idea of where the future is headed and what the future version of us will look like. Yet if we can sit back for a moment and let go of the file of information that we have taken with us from the past, and we let go of the ideas of what the files of the future look like. I'm seeing like Akashic records and labels and all of that. And we just take a moment and feel into the expansiveness of how vast our consciousness really has the potential to expand into. We can even let go of all of that and be completely present with the state of presence. And when we allow ourselves to do that, our left and right hemispheres are already unified as one. And therefore, the analyzation, I'm playing with these words, analogies, analytic, the call to analyze is let go of. And we are then able to find stable, and find our sense. Okay, I'm seeing a stable and a horse, which is power and freedom. We are also able to stabilize these frequencies and hold that space of inner presence. When we do that, all syncs up, all syncs together, and therefore we become present and we are creating in the now without looking forward to the future, wondering from an analytical perspective what it is that we are going to create, or better spoken, what it is that we think we are going to create, or better spoken, I'm having sense of spoken on the wheel, spokes, a better sense of where we are lining up. Instead, we just do. Oh, I'm seeing a play on words with that, like DEW, like drops of dew and the fractal in water. Instead of us figuring out and organizing statistically, we change the statistics by being in that space of complete awareness. When we hold that presence, it creates the key. It creates the key to unlocking the frequency within that allows us to blend and merge in a sense of unification and oneness, not only with ourselves and all aspects that are beneficial for us to grow with, within, from, and through and to, but it also allows us to tune into the do, And we create or take action from that space that is at oneness with the water. And I'm seeing water droplets. We're not separate from the ocean. We then create from a fluid momentum, and we move in motion through present awareness, which is the true word definition, or the definition of the word stillness. For even though a river, or better spoken, a river is always moving, water is still. It is still held within a particular component, hydrogen oxygen molecules, for example, that holds the shape of the definition of the form of water. Yet water takes on the energy, or the components of the energy that it is then moving with. And I'm being shown ice, rivers, streams, waves, snow, boiling, right? But it's still water until it dissolves and is then alchemized into something else. Clouds. So we are using this analogy because many people think being still means non-action. It means complacency. It means that we are not doing anything. Yet the other definition of stillness is being present with what is. And that is in our everyday action of living, of being in the moment of life, of interacting with one another in such a way that we are able to live and display this life in human form. Much like water, each and every one of us is part of the human collective, in skin, bones, and in a momentous movement of alchemical unification with all of the cells that are in our body that are constantly communicating with all that is around us, through us, and within us. So I'm seeing reference to waters in our body. We drink water. We swim in water. That's still all part of us. I'm seeing a reference to unification and how, food is absorbed and integrated and it becomes one with us. So this is shared for a numerous amount of reasons. We are in the process of moving through, I'm seeing a hoop, a loop, and I was kind of shown my ring light, like a ring that's a light. And I'm kind of getting a reference to the Aurora Borealis. So in this moment, let's dip into another type of communication. Let's dive into a deeper form of word association. Let us play with this in such a way that we are able to banter and play with words as we bat them back and forth. We swing, swing, batter, batter, swing. We open to a new way of interpreting the information that is coming through this ring, that is coming through and ringing in our ears, that is creating a ring, that is a tone, that is a sound that we are responding to. Just like a ring on our telephone, you might say, "You can ring my bell." So we change the chorus for a moment, we change the chords for a moment, we strike a chord with a different type of accelerated frequency of communication. And this requires an acknowledgement, an ability to ramp up this form of communication and let go of the need to sit with this and to figure it out. We must open into a place of no doubt. We must let that musical consistency flow through us and bandwidth. I'm getting a reference to No Doubt, the band. Bandwidth, and allow our vocal cords to express from a fluid form that is no longer held within a form of contemporary, that is looked at by our contemporaries and then judged accordingly. For the judgment that is being placed on the chords and the vocalization that we are using in this particular stylization and font is a multidimensional play. Therefore, that which is seen can only be seen or felt or heard or sensed, when all senses are being used for that which is the old ability to sense and stay in the senses, let's be sensible about this and plausible and be in a place of refined judgment, is not applicable to the way in which we play with this word exchange. This word exchange is meant to be shared in a versatile stir-up, if you will, a roundup, if you will, a freedom that is unbound and unbridled, that allows the brightness of the frequency of the words that are being expressed through the human form that is beyond that which can be formed in a typical language variation. For we could play with this and tune into a cube, if you will. If you look at a Rubik's Cube and you were to take each cube inside of the cube and flip each color around in the spectrum and then reorganize them with words on the cubes, they would all take on a different meaning for the layers or the linearization or the order in which the words were displayed in a pattern would then share the communication based on the verbiage or the enunciation of the package in which the format was shown, displayed, or hypothesized about, or understood analytically, etc., etc., etc. We are trying to share that there's a word bank that is well beyond the linearization of banks that we have all been drawing from. We have been drawing from a schematic that has been well versed and has now moved to an end, one might say, for we are tuning into the multiverse that allows for a language of frequency. This language of frequency gives an ability, and I'm shifting into another frequency right now, by the way, of word play. And we play with the word play right now. For even in that, the definitions are many. We could think of children at play. We could think of playing music so you hear it. You could think of playing with something. You could think of a play that we all watch from a seat in an audience looking at a stage that is filled with more words, that is filled with more people acting and reenacting those words. So therefore you have an audience who is looking at a display, a play on stage, that is listening to a format that is written before that moment from a person who has processed information and put it down onto paper or in some type of schematic that is then read and interpreted in a dance or a variation or an interaction of two people and also a I can't remember what it's called, but like the background. And then we watch that and we interpret it from that perspective. Are you following this directive? In the audience could also be watching the play, yet playing on their phone, yet playing with a toy, or playing out certain things in their mind of what they might need to be doing the next day. And all of this is happening at the same time. I'm being called to just pause for a moment. And so we are playing with this, for we are already in a multidimensional field in what we might refer to sometimes as unawareness. We are unaware of how multidimensional, multifaceted we are because we have been taught that focusing on one thing at a time is what we should do or what we are doing. But in actuality, how many of us are never really truly being present? How many of us are never truly focusing on one thing at a time? And let us move into the idea of focusing our attention on multiple things all at once. Some people call this or have given a name for this, and I'm saying like ADD, ADHD. This is a different type of interaction, we might say, with reality. And we might venture to say that there are many people out there that hold on to this pattern. This is a pattern, if you will. It is a way of interacting with the world. It is a way of interacting with the communication and the patterning that is being offered to us in our world. It is a feedback mechanism and device that many of us are learning is not so bad. it can be challenging because we have been taught that we must do a particular thing in a particular order. Yet many of us are recognizing that that order has been shaken up. I'm seeing Scrabble, and if you look at Scrabble, you've got a cube with letters on it, right? And no, that's a different game. Yahtzee. But I'm also being shown Scrabble. So lots of cubes with letters and the Rubik's Cube. By definition, this is seen as a disorder because it is not in the order of how we have been operating from the old platform, the old stage, the old programming, the good old days. And here we are now in a different time. Therefore, we are being invited to recognize the new format and to play with it. Find what works for us, for how we interpret information has expanded. And therefore, we must figure out a new way to enhance our experience by not gravitating towards the old form of gravity, if you will. And this is a play on words. For many of us, see gravity as something that is grave. It is pulling us down. It is keeping us in place. It is heavy. And we would venture to say that I'm hearing Odessa, wait, how does it go? Gravity won't stop us now. I listen to Odessa like every day. I should know this, but I don't. I've forgotten it already. Gravity won't. Anyways, won't stop us now. Yeah, so basically that to me is a play on words. Like, that's not holding us back. What's holding us back is our concept around gravity, our concept about what it does to us, what's being done to us, and our concept of what we see as something being out of order. So we are being called to reorganize our skepticism around certain distribution systems. And even as we say this or use this sentence, this is a play on words, which is another version of play, meaning we reorganize our distribution system or organization system. Let us play with this for a moment. So I'm going to pause. Okay, so it's hard for me to go into this without staying in flow about the meaning and the definition behind distribution system. So what I'm hearing is we're being called to reorganize our distribution system. Okay, so let's play with that for a moment. So we could look at that like how we send out our energy, right? How we're organizing things, how we distribute our definition about something, how we line up with something. But let's go a little deeper into that. The first thing that comes up for me is electric power distribution. So electric power distribution is the final stage in the delivery of electricity. So if I go back to this and I play with this, I could go into so many different layers. And if I look at the picture to this, there's a lot of layers to this. But let's use the fact that many of us feel like we're too slow or too fast, or we're too high or we're too low. Each of us has an individual and unique way in which we distribute our power. I'm getting that picture in my head again of the horses in the stable, stabilizing the energy. Horses represent freedom, horse power, right? How we ride and how we get from one place to another, etc., etc. So the delivery of electricity is the process that starts after the generation of electricity in the power station up to the use by the consumer. So the play on words on this, well, okay, let me just pause. Let me tell you one version of the play on words. Oh man, you guys, I just went poof, I'm gone. So reorganize our distribution system. So the first play on words on this. So this is where you guys, if you guys have followed the way I speak or what I've written about, I'm being called to share some of my writings again with everybody again. I just double check because sometimes I forget to unmute myself. I'm like, I really hope I've been recording this. Okay, let me just pause because I don't know what is happening with my camera. Okay, that's better. I was starting to look like an AI. Weird. So the first play on words when I do my writing, there's multiple ways of, it's like a Rubik's Cube. And if you open up a Rubik's Cube and you really open it up and parcel it out, it has varieties and branches. They can branch into whatever the person who's watching the video or reading the writing from their angle, from their perspective, they can apply it to something that's going on in their own life, in their own world, in their own reality, or maybe what they're seeing in the collective, what they're experiencing. And it's not, although sometimes the writing can be about something specific, it depends on how I'm sharing the energy or how I'm sharing the story. So we're redistributing, right? We're reorganizing how we distribute things, or I don't even now remember what I said, but distribution is the act of dividing or parceling it out. So we're being called to look at a couple different themes here. If we are, let's say we have trouble focusing, because we have ADHD or ADD, and I know they're different, and so apologies that I'm not necessarily compartmentalizing these in different categories, but I'm using this as a whole blueprint, let's say, for the difficulty of being able to focus. And there's other people who are hyper focused, OCD, right? And there's different layers of that. There's people who are on the spectrum. There are people who are really low, they're ultra focused, and we're all different. We're all different. Like these crystals behind me, they're all a type of agate, right? But they're all slightly different. And that's what makes it so beautiful. So how we are acting, going back to my stage and the play and the different actors all playing with each other, we're watching that, and how we're responding is all individual. So how we're dividing ourselves up and then parceling out that energy needs to be reassessed, because if we are someone who has trouble focusing, maybe we're not supposed to follow the old paradigm. And maybe the old stuff works well for us because we are able to hyper focus. Does this make sense? So that's one of the meanings of what my guides are talking about. So now I'm on etymonline.com. So I jumped the gun a little bit. So playing with this word, distribution is the act of dividing or parceling out. To deal out in portions, okay? But here's what's so fun about this. To pay, assign, or grant, because it came from tribute, distribute, distribe, this tribe. So what are we granting to other people? How are we back to freedom and power with the horses? How are we managing what we are sending out, who we are giving our energy to, who we are putting in charge of our energy, right? The charge, who are we putting in charge of our charge, our frequency, our electricity? And this says to allot among the tribes or a tribe, that which is distributed or apportioned, act of spreading out as over a surface. Now that in itself is a plan. This takes me to another branch or limb of that one sentence, because to me that has to do with physics. I can't quite remember other things I've written about. Spreading out over a surface. We'll come back to that maybe. And then it goes into tribe. Talks about the 12 tribes, where this came from, blood, the race, so on and so forth. Okay, this goes back to tribe. But also it goes into concentration, act of bringing to a center, act of collecting or combining into or about a central point, center. So now I'm on Wiktionary. To divide into portions and dispense, to supply to retail outlets, to deliver or pass out, to scatter or spread, to classify or separate into categories. So we're being called to reorganize how it is that we distribute our energy. And just in general, our distribution of whatever it is. So I'm being called to bring it all back into oneness and stop compartmentalizing everything and to reorganize it, to get it into an organized space so that we're not so scattered. Yet by doing that, we spread out. Our energy expands. And now I'm being called to go into the next layer of this play on words. And you guys, I'm sharing this because this is the message. And this is the sound behind the sound. This is the different ways in which we can communicate, or we're being called to understand communication in multidimensionality. So if I look at this and I'm back to electric power distribution. Distribution is the final stage in the delivery of electricity. Electricity is carried from the transmission system to individual consumers. So this is like when, oh man, this is taking me into free power. This is taking me back to, we're being called to reorganize how we distribute this. So this takes me back into, this is going to have to shift. And I could go into so many different layers here. This is so fascinating. All right, let me go back into the spin for just a moment. Whew, that took me down the rabbit hole. No pun intended. Always going down the rabbit hole, right? So, as we follow this white rabbit with this train of thought, we exit the matrix from one perspective and we redefine that which it is that we are operating within, the directional stability of our frequency, the ability to stabilize our frequency without being categorized into some, I'm hearing pothole of generation after generation of distortions and being pigeonholed into a particular ideology or definition of who it is that we are and how it is that we need to handle our frequency and energy. This will, I'm hearing appropriation. Okay, I don't really remember what that is because that's a plan. Okay, and then I heard misappropriation. So it's like taking something from us. It's like, okay, this is how you need to handle this. When the old system really doesn't even understand the new system because they're operating off of an old platform trying to get us to pay attention to an old play. And that's another version of this message. So we bring it back into different variations of how these messages are channeled, different ways that we can channel our energy and frequency, and that which it is that we are each tuning into of our own accord. And when we even use the word accord, it means our own order, the way in which we do things, and the reverberation sound effects that we each carry as we go through our life. So the chord, or the notes that we carry, that we take, that we pay attention to, that we read and we read from. So let us dip into a different form of communication for a moment. I have to cough. For each of our energy is so valuable that it is something that we are being called to recognize and to call back to us and to recognize our own value from a non-egoic perspective, even though the ego is valuable in itself, for us to appreciate our validity and to allow us to create our own sense of who we are. Yet we are beyond that which it is that we think we are, or that we have believed ourselves to be. And so we are being called to feel into the true ability that each of us possess. And this even is a play on words because I'm seeing how I could break this down into letters. For we are all each and acting in our own accord. Let us go back to this. So in accordance with the higher frequencies that many of us are seeking out or seeking to tune into and activate or reunify with, we would venture to say, it is important that we realize our uniqueness is part of what brings us back into oneness. And if we can each accept our own journeys in this beautiful path, we begin to fall into presence, and we begin to feel into presence, and we begin to feel ourselves falling, if you will, and we let go of the need to hang on. It's like falling in love is what I'm hearing. Falling in love. Sorry, that was a Labyrinth reference. Couldn't remember Odessa, but I could remember David Bowie from the Labyrinth. Oh man. Kushi wa ene. So here we go with a little different type of communication. Kushi wa e mako ne aishi ni ni ki makai ni wa e shu ni kumahai ni kainu machine. Niki wa ene wa hau moko ene. Ni kushi makini a tititi a niki kua hae shunu koe boa e ne tititi ki boa shiniki wa he ne tititi u shiniki wa hae ne kua in o e no kua he ne shu ne wa e ne kui puku e ne he shiku e ne awa na hae shu ne wa he ne ki le no ko. So I'm going to go into a different string. Tushtenehek e tikunihiwa bakai ishini kinikiwa ishi pukui ehene bakene wa ene shuku yete takone wa ishunuku pa kanwa kua hashiniki kayena de shiaho kai moeti moa hua hashine. These different forms of words, of sound, of language is shared by letting go. For if we were hanging on to the verbiage that we, Carrie, and my team of consciousness was taught in this lifetime from birth, we would not be able to tune into these other lineages that are part of the DNA scaffolding that is part of the human technology. For each of us holds multiple layers, multiple facets of the beautiful energy that we have access to, that we are part of, that we are creating from, that we are poured into, one might say. We are not poured into concrete. Instead, we are a moving light, liquid light complex, variations and varietal expressions in form. Therefore, we have access to many different frequencies, and this includes language. This includes facets of the imagination. And there are those of us who are fascinated with and by the imagination, and we encourage all of those light keepers. I'm seeing like light workers and lighthouses and keepers of the lighthouse kind of thing, like it's a combination. Light meaning the imagination. For you are, I'm just seeing how important it is for us to use the imagination right now. Too many of us have forgotten the power of the imagination. And while we are not encouraging those to get lost in the imagination entirely, we are lost if we do not use the imagination, if we do not actualize our potential through imagining what that potential is. Instead of tuning into what we are told through our circumstances, through our programming, through those that create our programming, in essence, sometimes even our circumstances or circumstantial references to our life academics or lack thereof. We are encouraged to flow into the manifestation through the manifolds, through the man that is constantly unfolding, through the folds that are inside of man. The human, the brain, is merely one aspect of these folds. So we are being encouraged to unfold like the beautiful flowers that we are and imagine what that looks like, what that feels like, what that flower holds within it. The colors, the smells, the sights, the sounds, all of it. For when we utilize our imagination and combine it with our senses, we are able to then recognize the sensation of the presence, the gifts, the unfolding, the unwrapping of the presence, being present, the presence within, and that which it is, that is the human. For we are beyond anything that we are truly harnessing right now. We are capable of so much more, and we are walking through and holding open at the same time the door, if you will. I'm hearing the parabellum, parameters. We use this language as an example, for it is a tool to allow those that channel or share in this frequency, whether you speak it or respond to the mere sound of it, is irrelevant. It is a way to access the other parts of the body and the brain, the folds, if you will. It is another tool in the Rubik's, if you will, the Rubicon, the box, the star, the shapes. I'm seeing like I'm hearing the nesting, the nest that is the human. And then I'm hearing there's no place like home. And that song, I'll be here where the heart is. It allows us to access these deeper feelings. For all of this imaginative creation must be felt. In order to create it, it must be, I'm seeing drawn, somebody working with like felt markers. I'm seeing it must be felt, but that's a play on words. Felt, the felt tips, the markers drawn out, accessed, and brought into the skin suit. For this is the reality that we are creating from. We are not creating from a reality out there right now, although I'm being shown that we are, but like I'm sharing this message from a body on planet Earth, even though this that I'm accessing is potentially beyond Earth. I'm accessing it by pulling it through and talking, speaking it. It's one of my senses: sound, speech, sight, all of this. So we're really being called to, this is why art is so important. This is why writing is so important. This is why dance is so important. This is why mathematics, like they're showing me that mathematics, even in itself, especially quantum everything, physics maybe, I'm hearing quantum tunneling, like this is a form of quantum tunneling. Can't remember what that is. I should write, I should know, but I got to get out of my left analytical brain. Let's play with that for a moment. Let's remember this together, shall we? So what's funny about me is my sister always used to make fun of me. She's like, Carrie, you have the memory of a fruit fly, which isn't always helpful. Sometimes I do remember, but part of it, it's like I'm constantly relearning. So I'm like seeing it from now, I'm learning it from a different perspective. And then I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. But it doesn't necessarily stick. And I think that's part of that ADD, right? That not being able to focus sometimes can be useful. Not when I'm taking a test. That's a whole other can of worms. Haha, quantum tunneling, wormhole, can of worms. Okay. In physics, quantum tunneling, barrier penetration, or simply tunneling, is a quantum mechanical phenomena in which an object such as an electron or atom passes through a potential energy barrier that, according to classical mechanics, the old paradigm, story, stage, and no offense, it's really helped us and it's still applicable in a lot of ways, but we're in the age of quantum now. So we can't necessarily use the same programming like computers, right? We're in AI now. We're beyond the old mode is what I'm hearing. Modem. I'm hearing modem. Like that's a dummied down, even though back then it was so smart. Now, if we're still applying the old mode, that is dumb. Like it's dumbing us down. It's not giving us our full potential. All right, so through a potential energy barrier that, according to classical mechanics, should not be passable due to the object not having sufficient energy to pass or surmount the barrier. So part of this play on words is if you can open yourself up energetically, this can come through. It's like we're all channeling constantly. We're all tuning into by using our imagination, like what Tesla and Einstein and many other people that I don't know the name of. Or how about Shakespeare? Or how about Leonardo da Vinci, right? So we look at them, but it's like Jesus said, right? You can do that and more, or you can do all that I can do and more. So we've been taught by these beautiful teachers who left this work behind, and now we are, I'm hearing, taking up I know it's mantle, but it's manifold. Like I'm hearing manifold. So we'll go into that a little bit. Tunneling is a consequence of the wave nature of matter. Oh, well, that's funny because matter waves are a central part of the theory of quantum mechanics, being half wave particle duality. So this is a play on words basically saying this helps us break through duality, right? This helps us get into unification and oneness, and it helps us break through duality. It describes the state of a particle or other physical system, and wave equations such as the Schrodinger equation describe their behavior. Oh, we could go into so much. Some sources describe the mere penetration of a wave function into the barrier without transmission on the other side as a tunneling effect, such as tunneling into the walls of a finite potential well. So it's confined to a box, but one which has finite potential walls, unlike the infinite potential well. Oh my goodness, there's so much I could go into. Quantum scale, tunnel effect. Oh, I did a video on this. I forgot about that. So I think I did a video on quantum tunneling. I might have called it the quantum tunnel effect. I don't know if I posted it actually, because some of the stuff I share is really out there. So I'm being called to go into, I'll come back to that because it makes me think of Schrodinger's cat. Okay, so we're quantum tunneling, from what I'm seeing, creating this constant, I'm just seeing a picture of yin and yang, yin and yang, the black and white wave, where the center, when we come back into presence, that present state, we're balancing out the duality, and we're actually able to use these waves. And this all comes back to something having to do with electricity right now. But I think I'm going to end on that note, maybe go into a second video, because I know I've kind of gone way out there at this stage. And so many of us are looking for verifiable information, and we're going to bring this back to the beginning of the video and talking about the analytical side to things, the particles, if you will, rather than the waves. We are acknowledging that there are particles and waves, but we would venture to say that everything is a wave, even if it takes the form of a particle, which is part of the wave, which therefore is still the wave. And so we come back to the left and right hemispheres of the brain. For even though there is the analytical and there is the creative, we would venture to say that all is part of the one in the same. And if we can find ourselves unifying and getting out of the need to define one versus the other, us versus them, I am this and you are that, and we come back into the center of gravity, if you will, we become unstoppable. We become the force, and yet there is no force that is needed, for we are present, and in that state, we become the gravity, for we are the gravity conductors, if you will, of this gravitational shift. And this is a play on words for as we drift, as we create. So I'm being called to play with this. I'm going to go into one layer right now. As we move with this flow and we create that which is adrift, we bring ourselves into a space. Okay, one line of the story I'm seeing, like, we're being cut adrift. We're moving into a different place in space. I'm being shown the kite again that I did in my previous video, which might have been with the agate behind me. But we're actually still connected. What we're doing is we're connecting into a different area. Ooh, okay, I just went into a whole different flow. So here's the whole multidimensionality thing, and where do I focus and what do I pay attention to? And I'm just gonna stay centered and recognize that everything here and all at once is available to us. So what do we want to focus on? What do we want to create? I'm gonna feel right now in this present moment and in this present state of awareness, I can harness this energy into a space of cohesiveness that allows me to interpret my environment in a completely different way, and how I write this in speech, how I ride this wave, how I create or share through this verbiage, if you will, allows me to spin an energetic signature and frequency. Whew. And I'm hearing to bring us afloat. So I'm seeing so much. So I'm going to rein it back in. And this requires charge. It requires a certain amount of ability to send out a signal and to recognize the signal that is being sent out and to value our own charge and not continually give our power away and plug into something that is no longer charging us. We are the ones in charge, and we are creating a compatibility with each other versus incompatibility. This lines us back up to the waveforms and recognizing that we are all part of the same wave and we are all part of the same form. Human, that is our form. And even those of us who may be shapeshifters or hybrids or part of some program here on Earth, we are still part of the same technology of energy that is here on Earth now, breathing the same form that is air, if you will. When I say form, it's like air, right? Oh, I mean, particulates. I was called to play with that for a moment because I was recognizing oxygen, right? But then I was like, oh, there's something else here. So if you look up air, it's actually a mixture of different gases. So according to, I'm looking at the Department of Environmental Quality, it's made up of 3 gases: nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. It also includes very small quantities gaseous water, which is water vapor, and certain solids and liquids, pollen, dust, etc. So even though we're breathing in air, that still holds a lot of other things, and that has a chemical pattern. Nitrogen has a certain form. Oxygen, argon, all of those have a certain form if you look at the elements. So I'm just really being called to share how really united we all are, even though if we stick with our one side of our brain, we think that we're so different or we don't fit in. And again, I'm being shown this. This is like a puzzle. These crystals are all kind of together. They're not shaped the same, but they're all fit together like pieces of a puzzle, and that's what we are doing. So this message was very layered and very multidimensional, and I'm going to end on that note and just gently remind everybody that as we move through this next phase of development, we are being called to just recognize where we're giving our energy, recognize where we're hanging on to certain things that are limiting us, such as our beliefs about ourselves, such as our belief about each other, our belief in each other. And recognizing too that the more we use our imagination and creativity, the bigger we're going to be thinking outside of this box. And I think earlier in this, I mentioned the matrix. We tend to think that we're inside of a matrix. And maybe from one perspective, that was true or is true because everything is held within a quantum web. So theoretically, Everything is inside some sort of matrix. Otherwise, we would all just be floating into nothing. So we have this idea that we have to get out of the matrix. And I feel firmly that we already have. So now we're in a different form of frequency and vibration that is responding to our creation, our creative attributes, our abilities to co-create. And some of you out there who think, yeah, I'm hearing people go, well, I'm the weakest link. I don't have this. I don't have that. I can't focus. Use it to channel that energy into something that you find joy in. And as you focus in that sense, and it could be working in the dirt, working in the soil, in agriculture, it could be mathematics. Although if you do mathematics and you can't focus, you're focusing. A lot of people think they aren't focusing because our idea about how it is that we focus is misunderstood. As I just used in this example in this video, which I think is really important because a lot of people out there are being diagnosed with certain, what was the word I used earlier? I can't remember. Disorders. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. Our disorders are really just a different order, and we're being called to reorganize, right? Our distribution, how we're distributing this, because we're the ones that are calling the shots, so to speak. And that's a play on words leading me back to the gun, right? Like I jumped ahead of the gun. So again, faster than a speeding bullet. Like this is a play on words. Even that sentence, there are those who will hear those words and go into a place of fear. And then there are those that will go into a place of, silver bullet. Oh, train. Oh, fast. Silver. I go into the chemical element of silver and so on and so forth. So we're all going to see things from a different perspective if we can recognize that we've all got a gift. So if you're having trouble focusing, it might not be that you're not focusing at all. It might just be that you're not focusing, so to speak, on the right things. And when I say the right things, that means the right angle. That means maybe try something different. Get outside of the box because now you're a star. You're not a cube. You're also a star, and you're also this, and you're also that. So, for example, the way that I shared this video was all over the place, but it was very actually centered and focused in a multidimensional way. So feel into that. Feel into what makes you feel good, what makes you feel. And the phone and the computer and even the social media can be very useful for our imaginations. But where attention goes, energy flows. So if we're constantly on our phone playing a game that somebody else has created, what is it that we are creating from that experience? It's not wrong to do that. A lot of people out there are gamers and they actually look really fun. I'm not a gamer because I'm doing this in my head and my imagination, but they look like some of them can be really activating and really fun. I think the last game I played was like Crash Bandicoot. Woo. But my point is on that, play. That's a different form of play. But if you can, bring it back into reality, bring it back into this present moment. We can't always be in our imagination. How are we going to utilize that to create something else that makes us feel good? And also, it's so important, get back to the roots. So, earth, go outside, get in the sun, because this comes back to the electric power distribution. If we're giving all of our electricity and energy to the game that someone else has created, that is utilizing our energy source. And it's finite, is what I'm being shown. It's not the infinite or the organic. It's a system and a program that can be very beautiful at times, but how can you apply that to this skin suit, to the living oxygen, argon, nitrogen, water? Sure, I know I'm hearing some people go, I'm breathing while I'm playing a game. That's not the point. Play with many different things because this enhances our experience overall. And it's also about human interaction, not just human interaction through the digital realm, human interaction through conversation, eye contact, touch, and or animals. Some people don't like people. Maybe it's an animal world, animal realm. All of these things we're really just being called to utilize more than what we think we have the energy for. Going back to what I said in the beginning, restoring that energy so that we don't get run down is important too. So, that's my own lesson here. So, in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, on that note, channeling. All right, so I'm done with this. I'm going to go into something else. I'm going to need to take a break. In order to take a break and restore my power, I'm going to meditate, right? Get in water, get outside and ground, do some exercise. All of that is important because when I don't, I end up getting sick or getting run down. So, in love and light, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Namaste. Oops, I'm frozen.